Hi, Charity. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I am good. I'm just going to start off by warning you that my dog is here in this room and he's supposed to be napping and he has decided now is not nap time. So, fingers crossed
Oh,
he stays quiet. Anyway, how are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm excited to meet with you. I looked at your book before when I first reached out to you, and I did a refresher this past week. And before we talk about your book, I wanted to highlight you because behind every book there's an author, and
Yeah.
I want to talk about you for a minute. I know that you have your bachelor's degree. I believe you're in school for clinical mental health.
Medical mental health therapy. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So tell me how you got into literature and mental health.
Yeah, sure. I know it's a lot. I got into literature, I guess, ever since I was a little girl. I've loved books and I've loved stories. And so I actually wrote my first book, which basically is notebook paper bound with string, but the hole puncher when I was 5 years old. And what I would do is I would write retellings of fairy tales like Cinderella and Sleeping Beauty, but I would put like black characters at the center because at that time I wasn't seeing any princesses that looked like me. So the princess had braids and the princesses had dreadlocks. And I would write stories about that and I would give them to my mom. And, not everybody likes, for children to rewrite their favorite, fairy tale classics with characters that look a little different. So I started running into some issues, and every writer will know like there's always rejection, there's always, um, people that aren't really going to like your writing. And it's crazy that it starts as young as 5 years old or 6 years old. But my kindergarten teacher was the first person to tell me that I would never be a writer. Yeah. And
Oh,
so that was the first experience that I had with rejection, and writing's not for the faint of heart. Down the road, I had stopped writing for a little bit, but I started writing again when I was homeschooled in the 5th grade. I was homeschooled because I was experiencing some bullying at school, and so I wrote about my experience. My mom was like, you used to write so much when you were a little girl and it brought you joy. So how about you just write for little girls that are being bullied? And so I started writing, and, that was my 2nd book, and that was just in, like, this lime green notebook, and so I wrote about that there, and it was like writing was my best friend, creating these worlds and these characters and being able to tell these stories and just let my imagination fly was the best thing. So fast forward to college, I was in a creative writing course, and we had to write a 10-page story for young adults. Um we could write about anything that we wanted. And during that time, the Black Lives Matter movement was just really at the forefront of media. And I was kind of trying to figure out how I fit into that because there I was, one of the only Black women in my school, my university, and the only Black woman in my class. So we were actually like having these talks about, the news the first 5 minutes of school. And the room was very divided. The opinions were very divided. And I was like, so it's hard for me to kind of share my opinion when I'm in class with these people, but at home, I'm like bold. I'm like marching around, protesting in my room. So I was in between these two worlds, and I was like, okay, so writing has always helped me. Like it's always been kind of therapeutic. So I actually wrote my 10-page short story, which would turn out to be Other Side of the Tracks in class. And then when everyone had to read it and have discussion about it, everyone was crying. People were like, this broke my heart. This causes me to like think differently. This is causing me to change my opinion on everything. And my professor said, Charity, you need to turn this into a book. And she's like, if you need to drop out of college, like to write this book, do it. And my mother didn't let me drop out of school, but I did. I did write this. This was like my night job. So I started punching out Other Side of the Tracks, and when I finished and it was a whole book, um, the next step for traditionally published authors is to query and try to get agents. And so I queried over 200 times, 234 to be exact. And
wow.
I got, yeah, I got 234 no's.
Wow.
So I was like, okay, so I got my first no when I was 6 years old, and now I'm getting so many right now. And I don't know, it just, the story, like, it would not let me forget. And I ended up finally getting an agent, I guess 2 years after I graduated from school. And right away, we went to auction on submission. Two of the like big five publishers were kind of fighting over this book, and we ended up going with Simon and Schuster, which is a dream come true. And all during that time, I'm experiencing my own kind of questions and things, and then finding that like therapy and writing. I'm like, I would love to just be able to help people realize the power of their words and the power of a pen, and how, you may have these thoughts and these questions, but it can, writing can help you. Creating these characters in these worlds can help you get through your trauma, it can help you get through these questionings that you have. And so I picked up clinical mental health therapy along the way. So that's kind of how I got here.
That's I mean, what a story also. I always talk I was a preschool teacher, and I always talk about it takes one teacher to break you. It takes one teacher to make you. And to be told at such a young age, your writing doesn't matter when all we want are for kids to tell stories, right?
Mhm.
Whatever's on your mind, just speak it. Freedom of speech, like whatever it is, let that creativity flow. And to be told no at such a young age, I can't imagine how long you carried that with you and the
Mhm.
effect it had. And I'm so grateful that you made a turn and you got back into writing, because
Mhm.
other side of the track, I mean, I was reading the synopsis, which I'm going to let you share the synopsis. But before we get to the book, I mean, it's an incredible story of also you just not giving up. Rejection sucks. It's so
Mhm.
hard to be told the passion that you have, it's not important to this person. They don't see it for whatever reason. And so I'm so grateful that you stuck with it. And now let's talk about this book. Give us like your synopsis that you would tell anyone.
Sure. So I'm going to try to make it really short, because another thing about writers is we can talk about our books for years, and I know we don't have years. So, um, other side of the tracks, like I said, it's a book of my heart. It's a young adult contemporary novel, which anyone can read it. You don't have to be a young adult to read it. I say that it's for ages 9 to 90. So there's that. But it tells the story of a racially divided town separated by train tracks. And when black blood is spilled on the white side of town, both erupt into an all out war zone, with our three main characters, Zach, Capri, and Justin, who live on either side of the tracks, caught in the middle. It's a story of forbidden romance. It's kind of like Romeo and Juliet, but interracial.
Yeah.
um, these two star-crossed lovers from either side of the tracks, they're trying to figure out how they can be together, even though their towns have historically had this rule: don't cross to the other side or else. And then it also tells the story of another boy who's, on the, I guess, black side of town, which it's called Hamilton, and he's kind of working through, figuring out how he can get out. So yeah, it's about interracial love. There's black romance. There's dream chasing. There's um, these three teens that are really trying to like realize and figure out who they are and how they fit into the world around them. But most importantly, how they can get out of where they are. So that's the first time I've ever, like, I guess, explained it to someone. This is the first podcast I've ever been on. So I hope I did a good job. I don't know.
That was no, that was perfect. And I it's what saddens me, because I was thinking about it before talking to you. And what's so sad is that it's such a realistic story. In 2022, the topics that you're touching on, the I don't want to give away what happens. I've read the synopsis, but I want people to go on your website and really read everything and pre-order this book because it's not out yet. But
Mhm.
it's sad because it's still what we're dealing with. Like, it's just um so heartbreaking that the story of young love and the diversity and the not accepting who we are and letting
Mhm.
everyone be. It's just so sad that in 2022 this book is still so important, and in the future it will be too. Hopefully we're not going to be where we are.
Right, right.
But it's still gonna be so important to say, like, this is the reality. Like the situations that you touch on are happening in our everyday life. It's you're not making things up here.
No, it's fiction, but it's nonfiction at the same time, and it's kinda crazy, something that my agent and my editor said when they read the book, they're like, "The book feels like it takes place, during, like, the time of segregation, but it takes place in 2022." So, they're like, "It's just so weird that we're seeing that, a lot has changed in the grand scheme of things like technology and media and things like that and how we receive it, but a lot of the problems that those before us have fought for, and tried to change are still something that's so, that's still here. And like you said, I mean, there's still, even though segregation is against the law, there's still a sense of segregation when it comes to class and when it comes to, areas, right? Where it's like, okay, everyone knows this is the other side of the tracks. That's the part of town that we don't go to because it's more dangerous or because the people there, we don't really like them. And it is. I mean, while writing it, it was so weird. We actually sold during the time when you know, um, Breonna Taylor lost her life and George Floyd was murdered. And it was so strange editing this book and talking and writing about protests and things, um, and seeing it in media at the same time. It was like, oh my gosh, like I wrote this almost 7 years ago, and it's still like so important to this day. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's just like one of those things that I don't fully get. Like I
Mhm,
don't think I'll ever fully understand the world that we live in and the things that are still happening to this day.
mhm,
And I think about how you said it's for children like 9 to like 90, and it's true because I have friends like I know a lot of young kids too who are 10 and they're reading Harry Potter. And I love Harry Potter,
mhm.
but this is also a book that like they can read, and younger children, like I'm thinking of all these high schoolers and the middle schoolers and how, you know, I always say kids aren't born racist. They don't understand, the difference in classes. We grow up with what we have and we assume that's the life, right? We assume that's what we need. And we have the opportunity to educate these children at such a young age and teach them this is not acceptable, right?
Right.
We can make this world a better world. We have to work for it.
Mhm,
And it might not always be fun. And we might have to have hard conversations, but we can make it better. And
mhm.
instead, we're kind of just still teetering on this like, do we want to make it better? Do we want to work for it? And I'm
Yeah.
thinking about how to get this book in other schools. And like, have you thought about? I know it's not out yet. It's going to debut in the fall of 2022,
Yeah, November 22nd, November 24th, I believe. No,
November
November
24th.
22nd. I'm sorry. My date keeps changing. So I'm like, when is it happening? With shipping and COVID and everything, the factories are kind of going crazy, but it's November 22nd. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so November 22nd. Have you thought about talking in schools? You live in Jersey, right?
Yeah, I live in New Jersey. So I have, I definitely made it clear to my agent that that's something that I really want to do. I definitely want to um, speak at schools, and I want to, like you said, kind of like educate everyone on what's going on and be like, you're the next generation. You can definitely make a change. I know that's really important to my publisher as well. So I can't share too much, but we are talking about how to get it into schools and
Okay, good.
things. But if you are an educator, please reach out to me because I do want to be able to offer educators advanced reader copies of this book so that they can read it and see if it's right for their class and talk to whoever they need to talk to about getting the book in their schools. So
Yeah, great. I mean, I know a lot of educators that are at different levels in the education field, whether it's like high school or college. So I'm definitely going to send this to them because I think that it's important that these young kids are reading these books and having these discussions at a young age
mhm.
because, unfortunately, by the time they get older, things are just instilled in their brains and it's harder to make that shift. And I think
Yeah.
if we touch on them at a very young age, they have the opportunity to look around and say, "Oh yeah, wait, that isn't fair. Why are we doing it this way? Like why aren't we being those change makers?" So I
Mhm.
think that it's incredible work that you've put out. I think that you're an inspiration. And the last thing that I want to touch on is I read that you have a bucket list.
I do have a bucket list, yes.
Okay, so talk to me about this bucket list. When did it start? What are a few things on it? Because I know one thing is an Afro punk band.
I love punk rock music.
Okay.
My favorite pastime, I love going to, like, dive bars and, watching bands play and different things like that, so the bucket list actually started when I was a teenager, and I was actually read a book where a girl was just living out her bucket list over the summer, and I was like, "Oh, that's something that I should do," so I wrote it, and yes, being the lead singer of an Afro punk band is one of the top things on my bucket list.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, publishing a book was, traveling around the world was, I got to go to Australia, so that was really fun. I got to, hang out with albino kangaroos, which I didn't even know was a thing,
I
but
didn't
they're
know that.
beautiful. Crazy, right?
Yeah.
They're amazing. So, there are some things that I have completed and some things I've yet to complete, so
Alright, I think that's so smart. I have a friend who is 10, he's my cousin, and he asked me the other day, I picked him up from school, and he's like, "What's one thing that you wanna do before you die?" And I was like, "I don't know, I just got you from the bus, like, that's not it's not on my thought process right now." And he, like, listed a few things, and I was like, "Okay." So I'm thinking about this bucket list, and I'm like, "Oh, that's so smart to just have a list of things that you just want to achieve," and writing a book is on it, and check that off because this book is gonna go far. I'm really excited to read it, and I can't thank you enough for coming on. I'm glad this was your first podcast. I hope it was relaxing.
Amazing. It was so relaxing. I was so nervous and I was getting ready, like, I hope I don't trip over my words, but you made it very comfortable. So
Oh,
thank you.
good. Well, you have a very nice way of speaking, and clearly this is a passion of yours, and I'm excited for November 22nd and everything that you have sent me with your website, TikTok, Instagram, everything will go in the show notes, and hopefully we can get those pre-order sales high
Yes,
up.
yes, yes, yes. Thank you so much for having me. I had
Of
such a good time.
course. All right. Well, have a great day. And if you ever, I live in Queens. So if you're ever close by, let me know. I'd love to meet you.
Oh my gosh, I will definitely look you up. Thank you.
Of course. Bye.
Bye.